Welcome back. I have 3 true Home Alone stories for you guys that will make you rethink being home alone again. Thank you and enjoy. My name is Jake, and I was your typical teenager with a love for video games. One Friday night, my parents had to leave town unexpectedly, leaving me home alone for the weekend. Excited at the prospect of uninterrupted gaming, I settled in my room, fired up my Xbox, and connected with my friends for an epic gaming session. The night started off with laughter and friendly banter as we battled virtual foes. The clock ticked past midnight, and the outside world plunged into darkness. That's when the first strange occurrence happened. The lights in my room began to flicker. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a minor electrical issue. Minutes later, the room seemed to change, the walls appeared to age, and an overwhelming sense of heaviness filled the air. It was as if I had been transported to another era, a time long past. I tried to ignore the feeling of unease and focused on the game, trying to convince myself that my mind was playing tricks on me. But then, the room temperature skyrocketed, causing beads of sweat to form on my forehead. The sudden heat was unbearable, and I started to wonder if there was a problem with the air conditioning. I got up to check, but the thermostat showed a normal reading. As I returned to my seat, I heard a faint whisper, a barely audible "hi." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice was small, almost childlike, but there was something eerie about it. I checked my gaming headset, thinking it was some sort of audio glitch, but everything seemed normal. Suddenly, the whisper grew louder, now accompanied by a soft giggle that sent shivers down my spine. It sounded as if someone was right beside me, watching my every move. My friends on the Xbox chat asked if everything was okay, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Fear had paralyzed me. The room began to feel suffocating, and the walls seemed to close in on me. I knew I had to get out, to escape whatever was haunting my room. Without a second thought, I grabbed my phone and rushed downstairs, away from the oppressive atmosphere. In the living room, I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. But just as I was about to dial my best friend's number, I noticed that the temperature in the living room had dropped significantly. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I felt a presence behind me. With trembling hands, I turned around, and my heart skipped a beat. A shadowy figure stood in the corner of the room, its features obscured by darkness. It seemed to be watching me, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. In a panic, I dashed for the front door, but as I reached for the handle, it refused to budge. It was as if an invisible force was keeping me trapped inside. I felt like a trapped animal, cornered and defenseless. With no other option, I turned and bolted out the back door, running as fast as my legs could carry me. The night air was cold, and the street lamps cast eerie shadows on the road. But I didn't care, I just needed to get away. I ran for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing with fear and confusion. Finally, I reached my best friend's house, gasping for breath and covered in sweat. He opened the door with a surprised look on his face, seeing me in such a state at 2 a.m. I stumbled inside and blurted out the terrifying events that had unfolded in my room. My friend listened intently, his expression changing from surprise to concern. "That's crazy, man," he said, trying to reassure me. "Maybe it's just your imagination, or maybe you're just really tired." But I knew what I had experienced was real, and the memory of that haunting voice and shadowy figure would forever be etched in my mind. From that night on, I refused to spend a single moment alone in my room. I convinced my parents that I needed to sleep in the living room, and they reluctantly agreed. Though they didn't believe my ghostly encounter, they understood my fear. But deep down, I knew that the terror I had experienced in my room that night was no mere figment of my imagination. It was a chilling reminder that some forces lie beyond our understanding, and that in the darkness of the night, we may encounter something truly terrifying. On a cold and stormy night, I found myself home alone. My parents had gone to a distant town for a family emergency, leaving me to fend for myself in our isolated countryside home. Normally, I enjoyed the solitude, but tonight, an eerie feeling washed over me as the wind howled and the rain lashed against the windows. As the darkness descended, I huddled in my bedroom, attempting to distract myself with a book. But every creak of the floorboards and every gust of wind sent shivers down my spine. The unsettling feeling grew when I thought I heard faint knocking at my bedroom door. My heart pounded against my chest, and my imagination ran wild with thoughts of intruders and malevolent spirits. Summoning my courage, I slowly opened the door, expecting to find a logical explanation for the sound. But there was nothing there, only the empty hallway dimly lit by the flickering light of a single bulb. Shaking off the unease, I returned to my book, trying to dismiss the knocking as a mere figment of my imagination. However, the quiet whispers of doubt gnawed at my mind, and the feeling of being watched persisted. Minutes later, I heard another set of knocks, this time coming from my bedroom window. I froze, too terrified to move or look outside. The darkness beyond the glass seemed to hold an ominous secret, and the rain-drenched trees swayed in an almost hypnotic rhythm. Summoning my courage once more, I approached the window, peering out into the stormy night. But again, there was nothing, no one outside, no signs of an intruder. Only the relentless rain and the rustling leaves. I tried to convince myself that it was just the weather playing tricks on my mind, that I was overreacting to the sounds of nature. However, each knock grew louder and more insistent, sounding almost like a deliberate attempt to draw me outside. Unable to bear the uncertainty, I decided to call my parents for reassurance. But as I reached for my phone, I realized there was no signal. The network was down, leaving me truly isolated in this remote house. Panicked, I searched for other means of communication, but the landline had also gone dead. The fear that had been gnawing at me intensified, and I felt a primal urge to barricade myself in the safety of my room. Just as I was about to do so, the lights flickered and then abruptly went out, plunging the house into total darkness. My heart raced, and I fumbled for a flashlight, praying that it would provide some semblance of security. In the suffocating darkness, the knocking intensified, loud, rhythmic, and coming from all directions. My mind was clouded with terror, and I couldn't discern whether the sounds were real or merely hallucinations brought on by my fear. I clung to the flashlight like a lifeline, its dim beam offering little solace as it swept across the room. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the eerie silence between the knocks weighed heavily on my nerves. Time lost its meaning as the knocking persisted, and the storm outside showed no signs of abating. Each minute felt like an eternity, and I was trapped in a nightmarish limbo. Exhaustion and fear eventually overpowered me, and I must have succumbed to sleep. The next thing I knew, I woke up to the touch of my parents' gentle hands, their worried faces illuminated by the morning light. "Sweetie, are you okay?" my mother asked, concern evident in her eyes. I struggled to find my voice, my mind still tangled in the web of nightmares and reality. I don't know. There were knocks, and the lights went out. I was so scared. My parents exchanged concerned glances, but there was something different about their expressions, a hint of relief mingled with their concern. "We rushed back as soon as the storm subsided," my father said, his voice soothing. "We found you asleep in your bed, and there was no sign of any intruder or disturbance." "But the knocks, the darkness," I stammered. My mother gently held my hand. "Sweetheart, we checked the house thoroughly, and everything seems perfectly fine. It must have been a vivid dream brought on by the storm and being alone." I wanted to believe them, but the memory of the knocking, the darkness, and the overwhelming fear was too vivid to dismiss as a mere dream. I had felt the terror too intensely to be imaginary. As the days passed, I tried to convince myself that it had all been in my head, that my mind had played tricks on me in the midst of the storm. Yet, a lingering sense of unease remained, a suspicion that there was more to that night than I could comprehend. To this day, I still wonder if there truly was something haunting our home that night, a malevolent force that defied rational explanation. The memory of those phantom knocks lingers in the back of my mind, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved, and that in the darkness, the boundaries between reality and the supernatural can blur into a haunting nightmare. I had always loved the old Victorian house that stood at the edge of town. Its elegant architecture and overgrown garden exuded an aura of forgotten grandeur. It had been abandoned for years, leaving the locals to weave tales of its haunting past. And on one fateful night, I found myself alone in its decaying halls, unaware of the chilling secrets that awaited me. It was a stormy evening when my parents left for a weekend getaway, leaving me in the care of my older sister, Lily. But Lily had other plans, and she promptly invited her friends over for a night out. I opted to stay home, relishing the prospect of being alone in the grand old house. As night descended, I made myself comfortable in the living room. The wind howled outside, shaking the ancient windows and creating haunting shadows on the walls. I lit a few candles, their flickering flames offering a meager defense against the darkness. Despite my initial excitement, I couldn't shake a sense of unease that settled in my stomach. The creaking of the old wooden floors echoed through the house, and each gust of wind felt like a ghostly whisper. To distract myself, I turned on the television, but the signal was weak, and the channels flickered with static. The eerie silence between bursts of white noise seemed to amplify the foreboding atmosphere. As the night wore on, my unease deepened, and every shadow seemed to morph into something sinister. The house felt like a living entity, its long abandoned walls whispering secrets I could not comprehend. I decided to explore the house, hoping that the movement would dispel my growing fear. The grand staircase loomed before me, its ornate banister barely visible in the dim light. I climbed the stairs, the creaking echoing through the empty halls, and began to explore the upper floors. Each room I entered held the remnants of lives once lived, dusty furniture, faded photographs, and decaying memories. But as I reached the final room, a peculiar sense of dread washed over me. The room was smaller than the others, its walls adorned with a collection of eerie paintings that seemed to watch me with lifeless eyes. I felt a chilling presence, as though someone or something was observing my every move. My breath quickened, and I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. Panic gripped me, and I tried to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if an invisible force held it shut. Suddenly, the paintings on the walls began to change, their grotesque images shifting and contorting into horrifying depictions of tortured souls. Their bloodshot eyes followed me, and their anguished screams pierced the air. Tears filled my eyes, and I screamed for help, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear me. But my cries were swallowed by the suffocating silence of the abandoned house. In my desperation, I turned to the window, hoping to escape through it. But outside, a dense fog had enveloped the house, shrouding it in an impenetrable wall of white. As I turned back to the room, a ghostly figure emerged from the shadows, a spectral woman dressed in a tattered gown, her eyes hollow and soulless. She glided towards me, her ethereal form defying the laws of reality. I was frozen with terror, unable to move or speak. The woman's face contorted into a malevolent grin, and she reached out with spectral fingers, her touch icy and suffocating. But just as she was about to make contact, the door behind me burst open, flooding the room with light. Lily and her friend stood in the doorway, their expressions a mix of concern and bewilderment. The ghostly figure vanished before my eyes, leaving me trembling and disoriented. I tried to explain what had happened, but the words felt hollow and inadequate. Lily comforted me, attributing my experience to an overactive imagination and the eerie ambience of the old house. But deep down, I knew that what I had encountered was more than just a product of my fear. The abandoned house held dark secrets and restless spirits, and it had chosen to reveal them to me on that chilling night. From that day forward, I could never look at the house the same way again. Though my family eventually moved away, the memory of that night lingered, haunting my dreams and leaving me with a profound respect for the unknown. The abandoned house remained a testament to the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding, a reminder that even in the most familiar places, horrors beyond imagination can awaken when we are alone and vulnerable. Thank you so much for joining me on this thrilling journey through the world of horror and suspense. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to stay updated on all my spooky content. If you're craving more hair-raising tales and heart-pounding adventures, check out the suggested videos on your screen right now.